Hi everybody, welcome back to Sports Card Connections. We're going to start our worldwide card tour. We have some boxes from around the world in our backdrop there, including a J-League catalog, Japan Soccer League. There's some Japanese baseball, English soccer, and my Matty Alou and Mike Trout, done by my friend Laura. And there's laying there flat is a Taiwanese baseball card box. Anyways, we're going to start looking at cards from around the world and just types of what's out there. Not conclusive or inclusive of everything, just samples of many different cards that I have that may be of interest to people who've never seen them before or don't know what's available outside of American cards. So here we go. We're going to start up north. We're going to start in Canada. And when we think of Canada, what do we think of? Hockey. And we'll start with Parkhurst. Parkhurst made cards from the early 50s to the early 60s. This is, we'll start with a 1960 Parkhurst. Get it focused. I hope I got it focused. And this is Gary Alcorn, which is a derivation of my last name with a D inserted, and I don't think that's focusing. A little time. There we go. Anyways, it's an interesting design because the backs have the team logo. Anyways, Parkhurst generally would do Montreal and Toronto when the NHL had 6 teams, while Topps would do New York, Chicago, Detroit, and Boston. Then they split it 3 and 3, with Parkhurst also doing the Detroit Red Wings, as you see here. Then eventually Topps, through their subsidiary O-Pee-Chee, they did everybody, and Parkhurst dropped out. So that's a 1960 Parkhurst, Gary Alcorn with Detroit. Moving along to a 1961 Topps, Dolar Saint-Laurent of the Chicago Blackhawks. His nephew Andre played in the 70s. And this is a 1961 Topps. Now you can see down here, where am I? There we are. Lithographed in Canada. But Topps Chewing Gum, TCG. Of course, distributed through O-Pee-Chee. Moving along, a 1962 O-Pee-Chee / Topps. Stan Mikita, great Hall of Famer of the Chicago Blackhawks. That's the blue bordered series. Here's another sample, which was, as you can tell, now they use this design. This is the 1966 Topps American Football League set. This design is also used here with 1966 hockey. It was used with Australian rules football. As Topps had subsidiaries, O-Pee-Chee in Canada, Scanlon's in Australia, Turnwrights in South Africa, and many of their designs were used in different sports. Here's Ted Green, a tough guy defenseman who played a long time with the Boston Bruins. Starting in 1968, you had 2 sets issued. Great Hall of Fame goalie Terry Sawchuk. Get him focused. This camera always has trouble with focus. And it's doing it again. So anyways, here's Sawchuk. This is 1968. Now that's 1968 Topps. Terry Sawchuk near the end of his career with the Kings. Here's 1968 O-Pee-Chee, which of course is also going to have the French on the background, on the text in the back. And Dale Rolfe, who was known to be a very tall defenseman. Now, the difference, you can tell they would alter the look on the back. The O-Pee-Chees are red and black. Topps are pink and blue. And the O-Pee-Chees also, of course, have the French text along with the English, and the US set would of course have just English. The O-Pee-Chee set will almost always be larger and print a lot more players. Going to 1969, two more Hall of Famers, Jacques Plante and Phil Esposito. And the backs, totally different. A bluish green for O-Pee-Chee. The blue, white, and yellow for the tops. Where the tops had 132 cards, the O-Pee-Chee went up much higher than that. Jacques Plante here's number 180. So this would continue through 1981. 1970, Glenn Hall of O-Pee-Chee on the right, Don Marshall with the tops on the left. The backs, a little more similar this time around, a darker green for the O-Pee-Chee. And again, of course, many more cards. 1971, Marcel Dion, rookie card there. Frank St. Marseille with the blues. Tops use their gray cardboard. O-Pee-Chee uses white. So you can see that difference right away. That reflection. And, of course, the French and the O-Pee-Chee set much larger. Now, 1971 O-Pee-Chee did something absolutely abominable. There's a number of cards due to trades. Here's the great Rogie Vachon coming from Montreal to the Kings. That's only his face. That is Kings winger Mike Byers' body and neck. Now, if they thought that looked real, they're just out of their mind. They did this with a number of cards. As much as I hate airbrushing, it's better than this. And these Frankenstein photos were just an abomination. But they did do a number of them. Here's a good example coming up. Dave Dryden, goalie for the Sabres. That's him on the right. Well, that's also him on the left, isn't it? Except the head is Larry Hillman, who had come over, I believe, from the Flyers. You know, like that looks real? Give me a break. So, yeah, one of those card experiments that should have never been done. Terrible, terrible, terrible on O-Pee-Chee, even though that's a very popular set. It also included a special retirement card for the great Jean Beliveau of Montreal. Focus. And, as it says, special collector card. There we go. And he had just retired after 1970 with Montreal with his uniform number 4. Moving on to 1972, you had the advent of a new league, which was the World Hockey Association, and O-Pee-Chee got onto it. Topps did not. Now, we also had, the NHL's answer was to have 2 expansion teams. So these are both O-Pee-Chee cards. You see they have uniforms for the new teams. Bill Nicholson with the Islanders, Ron Harris with the Flames. And whereas Topps had, I know, Mickelson in a Kings uniform, headshot. The backs, again, the white paper, O-Pee-Chee, look a lot better. They also, of course, included in the high numbers, and now very desirable, very expensive, are the WHA players, including the one of the most popular uniforms ever, the Los Angeles Sharks, which, oh well, let's see if we can get it. We have a couple of Sharks cards, Bart Crashley and Jerry Odrowski. So the WHA is about 60-so cards in the last series of the WHA. Of course, these were not available in the U.S. These are only in Canada. And the WHA was founded by Gary Davidson, a lawyer from Newport Beach, California. He also founded the American Basketball Association and the World Football League. And he did the same thing wrong every time. Too many franchises in cities where they weren't viable with underfunded owners. And each year of their leagues, they had the teams moving all over the place. So they never had the same lineup twice. The Sharks eventually became the Michigan Stags, lasted half a year and folded. But their uniform to this day is extremely popular. Moving to 1973, the NHL only set had either green or red borders. And there's Pete Laframboise of the Seals. The backs for the O-Pee-Chee can have the white paper, or they can have a dark gray, whereas all tops are gray. Tops also has yellow and blue borders to go with the red and green, which are just random. They're not particular colors for particular teams. Whereas O-Pee-Chee is all green or red. Okay. Nope. That is just not being happy. So the O-Pee-Chee set was much larger, and this was number 2. Laframboise was 244. The top set had leader cards, and they had the Stanley Cup playoffs cards, but the O-Pee-Chee added a lot more players. The WHA in 73 was only in a poster set for O-Pee-Chee. Now in 1974 they returned the WHA with their own set. And the design was this horizontal design, and it was also the arrival in North America of the European hockey players. The NHL had not embraced them, but the WHA was a place they could come. Lars-Erik Sjoberg, Václav Nedomansky, who had to defect to get here under communist domination from the Czechoslovakia. The Finns arrived, Heikki Hiranta, and the Swedes, with their 2 big superstars of the Winnipeg Jets, Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nilsson. The set is only 66 cards, and but it does feature the number 1 card is Gordie Howe, who had come out of retirement to play with his sons, Mark and Marty. And they're the number 1 card. They don't have individual card. This is all for the 3 guys. The backs are the pretty standard blue and tannish kind of color. So they did a WHA set again in 75 and again in 76. And in 76, it's interesting, you get lots of teams that don't no longer exist, like the Indianapolis Racers, Wayne Gretzky's first team. Longtime NHL veteran Johnny McKenzie with the Minnesota Fighting Saints. The Phoenix Roadrunners, goalie Gary Kurt. And of course, a lot of NHL superstars jumped to the WHA, like Bobby Hull, like Gordie Howe, Houston Aeros and the Winnipeg Jets, respectively. The backs are almost the same as 1974. Another team that's long gone, the Cincinnati Stingers. And the Calgary Cowboys. And the WHA sets can be quite fascinating because you do get players that are not in the NHL set, and you also get these defunct teams. We'll go up through 1980. You can see the the O-Pee-Chee back, the tops back. Another distinction in 1980. You can see the puck there with the name and position. The tops, you had to scratch it off. This all came with a black disc here. A gimmick if there ever was one. Anyways, the 1980 set gives you an idea of some of the different O-Pee-Chee. O-Pee-Chees are much more complete and have many, many more players than their corresponding top set. Of course, there's thousands and thousands I'm not showing. That's just a little sample. We go now to the Canadian Football League. And again, you had tops, but distributed by O-Pee-Chee. This is 1958, Bob Kelly of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Now this is the same fronts and back as the 58 tops American football set. Of course, you have French text here as well. And the CFL cards, I really like them. The CFL is really great. We had a game of the week that was shown when I was a kid locally here, and I I've always, it was actually closer to the type of football we kids played than NFL style. In '59, the same design as the tops. There's the great Normie Kwong, Hall of Famer, became a politician in Alberta, became president, I believe, of the Calgary Stampeders, but known mostly for his play with the Edmonton Eskimos. The backs, very similar to the tops. And this set, I believe, has 88 cards. Now this is really old school. Don Berry of the Eskimos, note the helmet. And also, this card is tough because the checklist was on the back. This one's unmarked. So, yeah, that gives you up through number 88. You ever want to read an interesting story about a player? Kind of a Shakespearean tragedy. Read Ronnie Knox. Coming off of UCLA's national championship, the only one they've ever had. Sought after by everybody. Stepfather became his agent. He blamed his stepfather for ruining his career, ruining his life, and ruining everything. He did play with Toronto. He did play with the Chicago Bears. He's in the 1957 top set with the Bears. Here he is with the Argonauts. He ended up as a janitor. And just read up on Ronnie Knox sometimes. It just didn't work out like they thought it would. He was college football's golden boy, and it just didn't get that golden for him in the pros. You can see it says Ronnie is on loan from the Chicago Bears, one of the most publicized players in Canada. Yeah, that was an understatement. But his career just didn't work out. Now in 1960, they changed. The CFL set looks nothing like the top set on the front, but it does exactly the same on the back. So these type of design elements were used from tops with their various subsidiaries. You find them in Aussie Rules football, you find them in Australian rugby, South American soccer, English and Scottish soccer. They'll use fronts or backs, sometimes combining, sometimes from the same set, sometimes they'll combine them. So we go to 1961. Here's Johnny Bright, and they went to a black and white set. Boo. And but the backs are the same as 61. Oops, American football. Of course, they don't come with that writing of some kid, but hey, I've got what I've got. Johnny Bright was the first overall pick in the NFL draft. He spurned the NFL and went to Canada, played his whole career there. He's a Hall of Famer. Then he became a school principal, I believe, lived his rest of his life in Canada. He was a great player, and here he is in 1961 with the Edmonton Eskimos. In 62, they did something completely different. 2-on-1s. I'm not a fan, but that's what they did. And again, black and white. Tops was always, even though, you know, it's O-Pee-Chee, but Tops was the one calling the shots, and they went cheap with a lot of their CFL cards. But the significance of Joe Kapp is most of his cards, whether Canadian or with the Minnesota Vikings, his first two cards with the Vikings, feature the exact same photo. Kapp probably has the worst history of any guy on Tops/O-Pee-Chee cards ever. They used a picture of him at the University of California. They used it like 5 times in Canada, 2 times in the U.S. Why couldn't they get new pic? This picture is of him with the British Columbia Lions. I don't get it, but laziness on Tops' part. So somebody else jumped into the Canadian card market, and that was Post Cereal. In 1962, they did an NFL set, but they also came into the CFL. And here's 2 great players, Hardeman Curitan and the great Jackie Parker. And the Post, as you can see, this one's cut off the box. This one is, as you can see on the left border, perforated. And, of course, the Post Cereal cards. They did 3 U.S. baseball sets, 1 U.S. football set, but 2 Canadian football sets. These are the first one, and they are very tough sets to complete. 1963, we have a strange deal here that continued with a lot of the Tops. A lot of these are colorized black and white pictures. Tops apparently didn't bother to find out much about what they were doing. The Calgary Stampeders on the right have always worn red. The Saskatchewan Roughriders on the left have always worn green. But these sets feature colorized photos reversed. The Stampeders are all green and the Rough Riders are all red, even though it was the other way around. And they just paid little attention. Also, there was team cards, I believe it's the Rough Riders, that were actually the Cleveland Browns, and they issued that card like 3 or 4 times without not ever figuring out that you were showing the NFL Cleveland Browns. Nutty. I don't get it. 1964, O-Pee-Chee had their own design. Hall of Famer George Dixon with the Montreal Alouettes and a black back. So completely different. And then the second post set had the yellow card with the with the text. There's a script for the team name. Bobby Potasic was a star at Michigan and ended up with the Rough Riders. He had also, I think he'd been traded. This is not going to focus. Traded with the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, the CFL and the NFL would make player deals on occasion. Here we go. I also have Beaten to a Pulp, as is the Potasic card, but one of the promo cards. This would have been off one of the cereal boxes on the outside. Free Canadian football trading cards. Yep, I got that in a group of beat-up cards, and that's you don't see too many of those. 1965 is one of the worst sets, in my opinion, ever made. Suddenly, they had all these horrifically colorized photos that it just makes no sense at all. Bobo Bilovich became a coach later. Here he is quarterbacking the Ottawa Rough Riders. It was, the reasoning behind it, I'm not sure, but I read one reviewer, a guy loved this set. I just don't understand it. They're so bad that a lot of times the color will run off the edge of the photo. It's like a kid with watercolor paints. This is one of the better looking ones I have, but there, still not good. So after 1965, they took a 3-year hiatus and came back in 1968 with a limited run, but they look like the 68 Topps football, the 1969 English and Scottish soccer, and this is actually the design used more than any other design Topps has ever done. Here we have Wally Gabler and Pete Lisk. Lisk won an MVP award with the Calgary Stampeders before going to the Broncos and the Eagles in the NFL. Then he returned to the CFL. The backs are different from the top set. They're green and white like the Topps, but they have a different look to them. And then they took another year off. Nothing in 69. In 1970, they came back with a great set. These are basically the 69 Topps American football, but with the full photo, not with a colorized background. And the backs are the same as the 1969 Topps football. So it's a really popular set. There's Hall of Famer Garney Henley. Ted Jarrella of the Lions. His brother Roy was famous with the Steelers. Hall of Famer George Reed with the Rough Riders. Terry Evanson of Montreal. You should read his story sometime. Yeah, and a great comeback from a car wreck. Future Washington Redskins runner Moses Denson started off with Montreal. In 1971, they went to an all-red. As you know, the top set is red or blue, depending on if it's National or American Conference team. The CFL set is all red. And two former NFLers there, Don Troll and A.D. Whitfield. The backs look totally different than the top set, though. O-Pee-Chee finally bailed out in 1972, but their last set looks just like the top set. There's Hall of Famer Angelo Mosca from Notre Dame. The format's the same. There's the original Italian Stallion, after Marv Luster from UCLA. There's Johnny Musso, the Italian Stallion, as you can see. And, of course, you have the French and English. The white paper, but the design is very similar on the back to Topps. And there's Don Jonas. And as many of you know, I do some through the mail autographs too, and I just got back Hall of Famer Ed McQuarters, who lives in Regina, Saskatchewan. Eddie Sargent is the name of the company that put out a stamp set with an album similar to Panini's. 1971, so yes, this is a Joe Theismann, whose real name is actually Theismann. Was changed as a publicity stunt to rhyme with the Heisman Trophy. 1971, Toronto Argonauts. These are very exhaustive, about 23, 24 players, so basically the starting lineups, plus the head coach for each team. You can a lot of time find them complete by team. Here he is, coming right out of Notre Dame, signed with Toronto instead of the NFL. After 72, O-Pee-Chee bailed out, and so you went to team-issued sets, largely available. Here's a Stampeders card. And I've got a Saskatchewan Rough Rider set. There's a number of team-issued sets. This one's a 1982. Let's flip them on the back. This is a police set. And this one's 1989 for, I believe, for Calgary. So those are available for the years nobody's producing. Jogo and then AW Sports started making them. Eventually, Pacific Sports Cards would make the CFL, and then it ended up back with Upper Deck, who's doing it now. This is an AW card I recently got signed. Many of you may remember Rocket Ismail. He was a big sensation coming out of Notre Dame, ended up in the CFL before signing with the Raiders. As you see, he just signs at Rocket. So after the CFL, we'll take a look just briefly at baseball. And we have Clay Dalrymple, the Phillies catcher. This is a 1969 Topps. This is a 1969 O-Pee-Chee. The O-Pee-Chee set's usually not as big as the Topps set during these years, 60s. They started, I believe 65 was the first set. Backs will be different though, as you can see. We have the Topps logo on the Topps card, the O-Pee-Chee logo on the O-Pee-Chee card. Of course, the twist with Clay Dalrymple is he has two Topps cards, because he was traded during the press run from the Phillies to the Orioles, so they actually had a correction. There is no O-Pee-Chee version of the Orioles card, only of the Phillies card. So each year you'll see it, they use the white paper. Topps is using, this is the bright pink. You see the difference in Topps paper usage, which is another subject unto itself. Many of those years you had a brighter, whiter paper and then the duller, grayish off-white, and they just added the line, traded to the Orioles. So there's an O-Pee-Chee. Now, some years they would change the photo. Here's a 1971 Topps Ron Hunt, been traded to Montreal. That picture's with the Giants. But his O-Pee-Chee card used a picture of him with the Mets, which is minimum 5 years old. But the backs were vastly different in 1971. Topps in the green, O-Pee-Chee in the yellow. And the O-Pee-Chee set is very popular. People love those backs. They're so much easier to read than the Topps black and gray on green. And we have some 1981 Edmonton Trappers, team issued. This is for in the Pacific Coast League, AAA for the White Sox. And you can find a number of sets like this. I went to high school with Leo Sutherland. Leo could really, really run very fast. He did make it up with the White Sox. See, there he is in 1980. And he's in the 81 Donruss set with the White Sox and the 80 and 81 Topps set on the rookie card. Mike Colburn, he caught with the White Sox. So that's a team issued. It's a little oversized to a regular card, issued only in Canada. And there's also Calgary, I believe, has some team. Usually the minor league cards are issued by some company doing all the team. This is specific just to Edmonton, issued only by the team. I have the whole team set. These are just 3 samples. And finally, we'll take a look at soccer. one of my all-time favorite team sets, and that would be the 1983 Vancouver Whitecaps of the North American Soccer League. And this set has a lot of prominent players. Dave Watson was a prominent English player. Just show 3 samples. Franz Thiessen had won Footballer of the Year with Ipswich, and he had come over to Vancouver. And then a very young future superstar, Peter Beardsley, who of course became very famous, especially with Newcastle back in England. They were all playing in the NASL in Vancouver, and it's a great set to come up with, sponsored by 7-Eleven, as you can tell. The final Canadian card we'll take a look at is non-sport. It's my aunt. And my aunt was, come on, Aunt Dixie, she was a movie, well, star, player, whatever you want to call it. She was in movies for 20th Century Fox, song and dance, light comedy, and as it says, 20th Century Fox. These little cards, issued by the Rhodes Manufacturing Company in Canada, were given away in weighing machines. So you put the money in, whatever it is, a nickel or whatever, to get your weight. And this guy weighed 201 pounds, and it would have a movie star. This is a 20th Century Fox set, I believe. There's like 40 cards in the set, and they come in multiple colors. But that's my aunt. She was a very nice lady, and she was in movies with 20th Century Fox, specifically a Canadian card. So that was my aunt, 20th Century Fox player. And so that's our final Canadian card to take a look at this time. Next time, we're going to go south of the border and take a look at some things from Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. So see you then. Thanks a lot. Bye.